The real causes of high blood pressure. Most people miss. When someone is diagnosed with high blood pressure, the advice is almost automatic. Cut out the salt. It sounds reasonable. It's simple and feels actionable. But here's the problem. For many people, that advice is incomplete at best, and at worst, it sends them in the wrong direction. Not because salt is irrelevant, it's not, but because salt is only one small piece of a much bigger problem. When you focus on sodium alone, you ignore the real reasons blood pressure went up in the first place. In this video, I'll walk you through the overlooked causes of high blood pressure, the ones you can actually act on today. In many cases, correcting these can bring your blood pressure down quickly, sometimes even without medication. We're going to cover nutrient deficiencies, metabolic factors, and hormonal drivers behind high blood pressure. Once you understand these often ignored forces, you'll see why the usual one-size-fits-all advice rarely addresses the root cause. It's also why so many people end up managing this as a chronic condition and staying on medication long-term. Why salt sodium is often not the main driver. Let's start with why focusing only on sodium can be misleading. Sodium raises blood pressure by pulling water into the bloodstream, increasing blood volume, and raising pressure inside your arteries. That part is true. But what's rarely explained is what happens next in a healthy body with properly functioning kidneys. Your kidneys sense the rise in blood pressure almost immediately. In response, they excrete excess sodium and water through urine. As that extra volume drops, blood pressure comes down with it. This mechanism works remarkably well in healthy individuals. That's why many people can eat high sodium foods without developing high blood pressure. There's wide variability in salt sensitivity. Some people are very sensitive, while others barely respond. If your blood pressure stays high even after cutting back on sodium, that tells you something important. The issue isn't just the sodium you're eating, it's how your body processes it. And this is where the real causes begin to show up. How magnesium fits into this. One of the first things I look at is magnesium. It plays a critical role in regulating blood pressure. Magnesium increases nitric oxide and prostacyclin, both of which relax and widen blood vessels. When magnesium is low, blood vessels stay more constricted than they should. That makes it harder for blood to flow, and blood pressure rises. I emphasize magnesium because deficiency is very common. Some estimates suggest nearly half of the US population doesn't get enough through diet. A meta-analysis of 22 studies found that lower magnesium levels were associated with higher odds of high blood pressure, and the lower the magnesium, the higher the risk. Why are so many people deficient? A big reason is diet. Refined grains, sugary foods, and processed foods lack essential minerals, including magnesium. High sugar intake also increases magnesium loss through urine, making the problem worse. Even if your diet looks adequate on paper, modern farming practices have depleted soil minerals. Food may look the same as it did decades ago, but it often contains less magnesium. I recommend prioritizing magnesium-rich foods like leafy greens, legumes, nuts, and dairy. But even with a good diet, many people may benefit from supplementation. This is something to discuss with your doctor. A recent meta-analysis of 38 randomized controlled trials found that magnesium supplementation at a median dose of 365 millirorn per day for 12 weeks produced small but meaningful reductions in both systolic and diastolic blood pressure. In people with high blood pressure already on medication, supplementation led to nearly an 8 mmHg drop in systolic pressure. Insulin's role and how to fix it. Now let's talk about insulin, one of the most underappreciated hormones in blood pressure regulation. When insulin levels are elevated, the kidneys retain sodium. They hold on to sodium and water, which raises blood pressure, even if sodium intake hasn't changed. This is why people with insulin resistance, prediabetes, or type 2 diabetes often develop high blood pressure. It's also why blood pressure often improves when insulin levels drop, even before significant weight loss occurs. Cutting processed foods, refined carbohydrates, and sugars can have a greater impact on blood pressure than simply lowering salt. Sodium may temporarily raise blood pressure, but persistently high insulin turns it into a chronic issue. The fructose problem. Fructose is a simple sugar used as a sweetener and preservative in many processed foods. High fructose intake increases uric acid production. Elevated uric acid interferes with nitric oxide, which keeps blood vessels relaxed. It also stiffens blood vessels and makes it harder for kidneys to excrete sodium. Uric acid is one of the labs I routinely check, especially in patients with high blood pressure. I've seen many cases where blood pressure returns to normal simply by reducing fructose intake and lowering uric acid. If diet alone isn't enough, we sometimes use a medication called allopurinol, commonly used for gout. but it can also help when uric acid is driving high blood pressure. The bigger point is this: cutting out sugars and processed foods improves both insulin resistance and uric acid levels. Fixing these two factors alone can rapidly reverse high blood pressure, sometimes without standard blood pressure medications. High blood pressure usually isn't caused by one major mistake. More often, it's the accumulation of multiple small physiologic stresses that add up over time. How to fix your potassium. Another major piece that often gets ignored is potassium. Potassium works in two key places: your blood vessels and kidneys. It helps blood vessels relax and signals your kidneys to excrete excess sodium. It counteracts sodium retention and lowers pressure inside your arteries. Potassium also works in the brain. Higher potassium levels, especially in the brain and cerebrospinal fluid, reduce sympathetic nervous system activity, your fight or flight response. This calms the nervous system and decreases hormones that raise blood pressure. Modern diets are typically low in potassium and high in sodium, the opposite of what supports healthy blood pressure. This imbalance alone can elevate blood pressure, even if sodium intake doesn't seem excessive. Combine low potassium with high insulin, high uric acid, and low magnesium, and you create the perfect storm. The body holds on to sodium, and blood pressure stays elevated. To increase potassium intake, focus on root vegetables like potatoes and sweet potatoes. Find fruits like tomatoes, cucumbers, and eggplant, leafy greens such as spinach, and legumes like chickpeas, beans, and peas. These foods also provide fiber and often contain magnesium, giving you a double benefit. Other factors: this isn't a complete list. Other micronutrient deficiencies, like vitamin D or B12, can contribute. Homocysteine matters. So do stress and sleep. Secondary endocrine disorders, such as primary aldosteronism, are present in 8 to 20% of resistant high blood pressure cases. I'll explore those topics in future videos. The key takeaway is to address these factors early before permanent damage sets in. Once blood vessels become stiff and lose elasticity, high blood pressure becomes much harder to reverse. I hope this was helpful. Stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next one.